Well, hello, everybody. I am so glad you could be joining me. This is my first Monday, or well, actually, it's not Monday night, it's Tuesday night. Didn't do anything last night because it was a holiday, and so this is a later than late return. Um, Thrash Pondo Pons could not be joining me because he's only available on Mondays, and he did a live stream over on his channel um last night, and I wasn't able to. I was invited to I was not that I wasn't able to. It was that I was invited to a friend's house, and it was a holiday, and I wasn't sure how things were going to go. And so I just canceled for last night. And it's my first night back since the tragic events that have unfolded in my life that I don't know if everybody's tired of hearing about it or not, but I don't want to keep bringing up. Okay, well, let's see. Right now we just got you, Tracy. Well, we got two people watching. It says, but only one interacting. It says more will be joining soon. Okay, that's good. And Emily's here as well. I know absolutely nothing about grunge. I'm here for support. Well, thank you, Emily. I really, really appreciate your support, and I appreciate you being here. I don't know. I mean, I kind of am. Uh, as I said, if you watch the video that we did, the podcast that we did, or listen to the podcast, however you listen to it, whether it's on YouTube or on Stitcher or Apple or whatever. I started talking. We did one on grunge, which again is an episode that I've wanted to do for a really, really long time, and and I wanted to talk about grunge proper, grunge specifically, not just the whole underground movement, although it's difficult not to have those two together. But I wanted to talk about grunge specifically as part of that underground movement. And of course, I don't mind you asking how long were you married, if you don't mind. No, I don't mind. I was married for 28 years. As a matter of fact, her funeral was actually on our 28th wedding anniversary. So it was just like a week and some time before our 28th wedding anniversary. So that's what, and the funeral was on that day. So we just barely made it under 28 years. Anyway, all right. Well, here's a good question. Thank you very much, Emily. When did grunge start? Well, that's a pretty good question. Most people really consider the beginning of grunge to be the beginning of a band called Green River, and Green River started in 1983. And so a lot of people think that is the beginning of grunge. They were the first band to you can listen to Green River here on YouTube as well. It's free to listen to. Um, and uh, and it was still 28 years. Thank you very much. I do consider still to be 28 years. Well, we were together for we were kind of together on and off for 2 years before that, even 2 years. Let's see. Yeah, maybe almost 3 years before that. So our first official date was when I was 18. So anyway, uh, let's see. Good evening, Retro. Good evening, Kenneth. And so in 1983, and it took how long to become mainstream? 1991 is when it became mainstream, is when it broke. And we owe that to one of my favorite. Well, actually, it's my favorite band, Nirvana. There are other bands that I like a whole lot, but Nirvana is my absolute favorite band, and they did break the scene. They did break the grunge scene and the underground scene altogether. So, Green River kind of melted into two bands. One band was called Mother Love Bone, which later became Pearl Jam. And the other band that was, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name right now. The other band, let me look at it right here. Not Melvins, not Babes in Toyland. Mudhoney, that's the band I was looking for. The other band became Mudhoney. So Mudhoney had ultimately a lot less success than than uh, Mother Love Bone did. Well, Mother Love Bone didn't have any success until they became pure Pearl Jam, and they got Eddie Vedder. And so, and then Emily, you're asking some great questions. I really, really super appreciate it. So, grunge started in the U.S. Yes, actually, grunge is homegrown. It is really northwest, and it was an entire movement that was part of the underground movement, which was larger than the U.S. obviously, but it was part of the underground movement of music. But it also had a lot of stuff that was specific to grunge, like its own culture, its own way of dressing, and a lot of its own sound. And the sound really developed out of a few things. Number one, because they were in the Northwest, they were isolated. And so a lot of bands didn't make it up that far, didn't make it up to Seattle, especially a lot of the underground bands only made it as far as maybe Portland or something like that. And they really saw Seattle as not really that big a deal. But the bands that did make the bands that did make it up there were influential. So Black Flag made it up there, and bands that were kind of already underground and really struggling and would play anywhere. And I don't know if you've ever been in a band, but when you're in a band and you're kind of struggling, you play anywhere. You play anywhere, they will have you. And so those kind of underground bands made it up there. Black Flag being one of them, but it was just a hodgepodge of of underground music and a hodgepodge of the fact that there was a big heroin movement that was kind of developing. Um, Cocaine was going out, heroin was coming in, and if you take heroin, I've never taken heroin, by the way, just so you know. Not that I'm judging anybody. If you ever did, it's not my business. Uh, but apparently, heroin. If you take heroin, you get a better high if you're not clean because it has something to do with your pores. So these are dirty people who take heroin, who listen to underground music, and also listen to like a lot of classic rock. um and then the other thing was the dress, and the dress is really that of a lumberjack. I mean, the Northwest, there's a lot of trees, there's a lot of harvesting of trees. And so you have that whole movement, you have this whole, it's also very cloudy there, and people have seasonal depression, so the music's depressive. So not only is it punk, but it's depressive kind of punk. Let's see here. Tracy writes, I considered grunge to be a child of punk. I do too. It definitely had a punk ethos to it, and it certainly, punk is the origin of a lot of punk is the origin of alternative music altogether, and grunge is a real pronounced part of the underground movement. The underground movement broke as alternative rock, alternative. But alternative and grunge, um, uh, really, they're distinct. It's just like all horses have four legs, but not all four-legged animals are horses. So it's kind of like that distinction. But they were so united when Nirvana came out in 91. Well, Nirvana came out earlier than that, but when they became popular in 91, that people had a hard time distinguishing between all the entire thing called underground movement or alternative rock movement and grunge altogether. So, and then Emily agrees. I agree, Tracy. Well, thank you. And I considered punk to be the child of the Velvet Underground or Iggy Pop, and any one of those. Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, punk rock was big in the late 70s. Another flash in the pan, too. I mean, the grunge was really a flash in the pan. It really, I mean, in its popularity, at least, I mean, it was really 91 to 96 at the longest that it had anything to do with the spotlight. And there's still underground grunge music today, and and then of course there are those bands that were inspired by grunge that kind of carried on the sound. And there was underground music before 91, but if you're looking at popularity, you're really looking at 91 to 96 at the top, when oh, my dog is barking, and and I'm sure you guys can hear that. When Soundgarden broke up. 94 is when Kurt Cobain killed himself, and that was considered to be the end of grunge. And then 91 or 96 is when Soundgarden broke up. And let's see here. And really pale skin. Yeah, yeah. If you live in the Northwest, you have pale skin because the sun's not out a lot. There's a really good grunge documentary, and I think it might even be free on YouTube. It's called Hype, and the subtitle is Up from the Underground. And that's a really good documentary of what happened specifically in the Seattle and the surrounding areas. So we have to remember that Nirvana really didn't come from Seattle. They came from Aberdeen, which is, I think, west of Seattle. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's west of Seattle. I think if you go, oh, no, it's east of Seattle. Because I think if you go west, you're running into the ocean. So, but it was still that same ethos. It was still that same kind of place and the same kind of movement. Lumberjack looking. Now, did anybody out there wear the plaid shirts or anything like that when it came out? When it started, because I did. I was about 18. I think I was 18 when Nirvana broke, and I was all over it. I was fully on board with the grunge movement. Wanted to be Nirvana, and I actually think Nirvana. Now, I used to argue that not Nirvana was not a grunge band. I used to argue that, and I've backed off of that argument now. I do believe that they are a grunge band, but Nirvana was truly and truly an alternative rock band. If you look at grunge and you look at its even the underground grunge before it emerged, before it became popular, and you look at the popular bands, we had the four popular bands: Pearl Jam, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden were the four big ones that kind of came out of that era. But Nirvana was way different than those. I think Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden have more in common than Nirvana. Nirvana really sticks out a lot. Nirvana really sticks out quite a bit. And it really has to do with it doesn't have to do with their look so much. They looked grunge, and it doesn't have to do with the unrefinement of the era as well, grunge era, which actually characterized a lot of underground music, that unrefined, that somebody is in a bedroom with the best recording equipment they have and just trying to produce the best, but just still comes out not like a real professional comes out. They had that going for them too, but they were Bleach was real grungy, but I mean, Nevermind and Incesticide were real punk. Like they were punk grunge mix if you listen to those two albums. Very more pop sensibility, more radio friendly. I don't know if you've listened to Incesticide, but Incesticide is my favorite Nirvana album. And Yeah, I mean, it's my favorite Nirvana album. It's the most punk rock of them, and it I don't know why it wasn't as popular because it was a collection of B-sides, but there were some songs on Incesticide that could have been on Nevermind. I mean, if they wanted it to, they really could have been on Nevermind. Um, Emily writes, every time you mention underground, my mind goes to the David Bowie song Underground. Hmm. I'm not necessarily sure I know that song Underground by David Bowie. Huh. I know that David Bowie was huge for promoting a lot of underground bands because he was a guy who was kind of at the right place at the right time as well. He was popular, but he had a very underground sound to him, and he did reach out to a lot of underground bands. Bands like, I know he particularly liked the Pixies. He promoted the Pixies quite a bit. I loved the Pixies. I think Nirvana is like, especially Nevermind, and they even have said this. They said that a lot of their influence came from the Pixies. But they are like an unrefined, maybe darker version, maybe a little bit more aggressive and heavier version than the Pixies. But that Pixie sound really comes through in Nirvana. As a matter of fact, um, when I was younger, I didn't like, I knew who the Pixies were, but I'd never listened to them. So I was one of these people who I can't really explain it too well because history's complicated, and you always have more than one stream going into any movement or anybody's personal life. A lot of people have more than one set of friends. A lot of people, so when you're talking about an era, it's kind of difficult to nail it down. But when I was a younger uh, preteen and teenager, up to about, I would say, 16, at least 16, 15 for sure, I was very into hair metal and other heavy metal as well. I was really super into hair metal and just regular metal as well. Iron, all the way, anybody from Iron Maiden to Motley Crue, Poison to a degree. But I mean, Motley Crue was my band. Uh, and then in about the mid 80s to the late 80s, I did start liking other bands that were still heavy, but I was still heavy metal. I mean, I had long blonde hair. I did my best I really wanted to look like Vince Neil. That was the person I was really trying to emulate, was Vince Neil. But at the same time, there was this, we had bands coming out that were getting popular, like and bands that I actually listened to as well. One of them would have been the Cult. I really liked the Cult, and I really liked Faith No More. But I also really like Skid Row, and then, of course, Guns N' Roses. And Guns N' Roses, I mean, I think they saved metal for a while there. They were I really like today I really like Guns N' Roses. I really have a lot of respect for them. But and then when I was 17, there was a girl who gave me a tape, and she said, I think you'll like this tape. I think you'll like it. And it was a copy of the Violent Femmes, their first album, and I loved it. And I listened to that like mad, like crazy, listened to it. Um, and but I still had this long hair. I mean, I still was listening also to Motley Crue. And at the same time, this girl now, this is not when Violent Femmes came out. This is just when the girl gave me the tape, the Violent Femmes tape. Uh, when when that at the same time that came out, there was the other band that just also came out at the time that the girl gave me the tape, was Alice in Chains. And I was like, I'm not sure about this new movement that's coming out. I wasn't sure about it. Didn't love it, but I did like a lot of Bang Tango was another one, another radio unfriendly radio band that I was listening to. But then Nirvana came out in 91, and by 92, I had totally switched over my look, my sound, my attitude. One of the things that happened with grunge, and we talked about this on the podcast, but I'll reiterate it here, is I don't think there would be the animosity toward heavy metal if it wasn't for grunge specifically. If the underground movement had emerged outside of the grunge gate that opened it, I don't think there would have been the animosity toward heavy metal. There wouldn't have been this, "Oh, you guys are stupid, you guys are dumb, duh, duh, duh," I don't but there was. That's just the way it was. And Nirvana particularly liked to make fun of the old guard. Um, and uh, and I was I was one of those people who went fully on board. Tried to pretend I never was into heavy metal. Tried to pretend. I mean, I was a phony to a degree. I was a phony. Now, I wasn't a phony in the sense that I didn't really like grunge and I didn't really resonate with it because I did, and all underground music. Um, I felt more at home there. But what I was a little bit of a phony about is that I tried to pretend like I wasn't a newcomer to the issue. And the truth was I was a newcomer to the issue. We've got some comments here. Let's see. The song was on the 35th DVD. Oh, that must be something you guys were talking about. Oh, righty here. I saw the Pixies live from Ross Center. That's cool. I wonder what year that would have been. Let's see. I've never had a look. All right. I want to grow up to be Stevie Nicks and dress like her. Well, yeah, I mean, Stevie Nicks is awesome. I worked with a girl one time who named her who named her both her boys Steve and Nick because she was so into Stevie Nicks. She dressed like Stevie Nicks every Halloween that I knew. I mean, maybe she still does. I don't know. Who knows? You tried to look like Jonah Jett. Right on. That's cool. Jonah Jett was awesome. Jonah Jett was like that. She has an interesting story herself because she got caught up in the heavy metal movement just because it was popular at the time. But she went from punk to heavy metal back to being punk without losing any respect from anybody. I love Jonah Jett. And Emily Miller writes, I saw Poison and Tesla in concert, passed out from the flu, had to leave. I still have an unused backstage pass. Oh, darn it. Well, you must have had the flu real bad then. I mean, if you passed out from it, that's a bit nutty. And Hungry Jerk is in the house. Hungry Jerk says, hi, everyone. Hello, Hungry Jerk. Glad you could be joining us today. And let's see. I was closeted fan of certain metal bands. My punk friends would have broke me. Yeah, I get that. Well, that's why, because then you move. So when I finally moved into that world of more alternative rock, that alternative rock crowd was made up of a lot of old school punks, and you just didn't listen to metal. You didn't listen to it was what they well, no, I think later they started calling it butt rock. They started calling heavy metal butt rock. Now, listen, that's a play on words because you're thinking butt rock. What does that got to do with it? But that name, but and I don't know if you've heard that term before, butt rock, as a reference to heavy metal. Well, they used to have radio stations that would just play strictly like either classic rock or old school metal or something like that. And on all their, well, you've heard these commercials before. It will say 97.7, nothing but rock. That kind of thing. And people then used to started making fun of it, started saying, "Oh, well, that's one of those butt rock channels," and meaning nothing but rock. But a lot of people don't know the origin of that tale. Well, hey, I'm willing to take any questions. So I'm I mean any if even if you ask a personal question. But I don't know if I really have much more to say. I don't want to cut out. I don't want to cut out any time early, but anywhere from personal questions to some direction in music. I hope I tied up my thoughts. I hope I tied those up. I think I did. Sometimes I go off on these trails and then I try to get back to the original point. Um, how can how can I used to listen to metal all by myself? Oh, you used to listen to metal all by yourself. Yeah, that's one of those things where you're turning it up in the car, you look around, you hope your friends don't pull up next to you because 'cause you're listening to uh, some band. One of the bands that I listened to that I actually really liked, was Tiffany. I had the hugest crush on Tiffany, and I would imagine in my I used to put on her tape, and I would imagine in my head that I was her guitarist, and we were boyfriend and girlfriend. And I used to try to play the guitar her music was not guitar oriented for sure, but that didn't stop my teenage imagination at all. Uh, how am I holding up? Um, right now I'm okay. I mean, it hits me. I'll tell you what, uh the week before the funeral was easier than this week after the funeral. Because before the funeral, I was still tied up with, things to do for her. And now basically what it's like is carving out a new existence. And I didn't when you're with somebody for, 30 years, um, you become an us. And I don't it's even so weird, it's kinda like almost like asking a fish what it's like to be wet. You don't know what it's like to be wet because 'cause you're always wet. And I don't know what it's like anything else other than to be us. Like, I don't it's almost like I don't I it's almost like I don't know what I wanna do, you know? It's just so, like, even in something as inconsequential as watching television, it used to be, okay, we would pick a show or we would take turns or, even in, like, a show I would like, I'm still conscious. I was still always conscious of whether or not she liked it, how many episodes I could watch. There was still an us factor. And now that's not an issue. That's not it's like, okay, what do I wanna watch on TV? So it is kind of carving out this new existence. And I know that's a mundane example, but that's just a mundane example that I can think of. It's much deeper than that and much more relevant than that. So I'm like, there's no us anymore, it's sad. It's just I don't know what to say. And I have no idea. I have no filter in the world. So, so it's difficult. And people are, they're kind of sometimes I think they second guess me because they're kind of wondering how I'm doing without that wall that I don't know, that not a wall. That's not the right metaphor that I'm looking for. That right label of us. So I don't know. Anyway, back to music here. Not much into grunge. I liked Ronnie James Dio. I get it. Metal is metal, and metal people and grunge people don't necessarily get along. So let's see. What was your favorite concert? You're not gonna. I actually have only ever seen one big band in concert, and that was, at least that I can remember. Um, that wasn't a Christian band. 'Cause I saw a lot of Christian bands like Carmen and, DC Talk and stuff like that. But the only, uh, big band that I ever saw or like at a arena was REM on their Monster tour, and they did a fantastic job. Loved it. Loved it. I wish I would have, just done things more, and I haven't. Uh Tracy Rothmeyer writes, "My first husband died. It was a surreal time for me." Yeah, it's almost like if you slip like those shows like Sliders, like you slip into an alternate universe and everything's just slightly different. I mean, it's different enough to be disturbing for sure, but it's not a totally different world, but it's different enough to throw you off. And look who's here, Dave. Now, Dave, I do have to hear from you because I actually thought about having you come on the show, because I know you hate Nirvana. I don't know if maybe hate's too strong a term, but I am very interested in what it was about grunge that you didn't like. It's almost like when you uh, like when you're into something, and then you find like a food item or something like that, and you find somebody else doesn't like it. You're like, well, that's a little like, I mean, I thought everybody kind of liked that, but and so I was very interested in what your take on grunge is. Maybe I overestimated your dislike of it. I don't know. All right, let's see what else we got here. It says me and my wife went to see Barry Manilow years ago. I would say that's pretty far off the grunge mark, my friend. Yeah, Barry Manilow is about as far away from grunge as you can get. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, all right. So, yeah, REM was cool. And Dave, I don't hate Nirvana. Well, that's good to hear. I think maybe hate was too strong of a word. But I had got the impression from the well, we've had a lot of conversation about music, but every once in a while, like the door of Nirvana will open up, and you seemed to have a disfavorable disposition toward them. And I was wondering why. Like I said, I was interested in even having you on the show to talk about grunge, but I've just been what I can do right now is kind of what I can do. Anyway, okay. I like the group Rush. Seen them 20 times. Well, I don't know if you were here when we had Redbeard on. But we talked about prog rock, and one of the bigger bands that we talked about was Rush in progressive rock. All right, I hate what grunge did to some of my favorite bands in the 80s. Suddenly, they no longer seemed relevant. It's true. It really is. And I had mentioned this earlier. If because we have seen two different kinds of music come alongside each other, and one didn't cancel the other one out. um like for example, acid rock was going heavy, and early heavy metal was going heavy at the same time. We saw new wave rise. Now they might not have liked each other and each other's music, but there certainly wasn't this everything that came before me was complete garbage. And I do have to blame I have to admit, I have to blame grunge for that, because I don't think that if the underground had movement had broke, like say with a band like the Pixies instead of a band like Nirvana, or a band like the Violent Femmes or something like that, I'm not sure we would have had that animosity where suddenly not only are you not being played as much on the radio, you are considered irrelevant. Um, Except there were a couple bands that I would have to admit that I considered I didn't like. I don't think they made much of a musical contribution. I'm sorry, Poison fans out there. I am not a huge fan of Poison. So, I think it's okay for them to be marginalized. I guess I don't know. Maybe that's mean. Maybe that's mean spirited. All right. I wish I could stick around longer, but I can't tonight. Good luck with the live stream, ENC. It's great to have you back. Thank you. I'm going to have you back on the show real soon. And if and me too. Don't be afraid to invite me back. I would love to make any appearance on your show that you'll have me. All right. Take care. All right. I just want to remind everybody too that to be taking advantage of, if you're a Honeycomb Hideout listener, take advantage of that. I just dropped a 10 things you didn't know about Married with Children today. And so it's on there now. So if you're a Honeycomb Hideout listener, you can go over there and watch that episode. Everybody else, I mean, you'll get it tomorrow, but the Honeycomb Hideout listeners get it today. So guess we'll see. Oh yeah, yeah. No offense, but that's the same way I feel about rap and hip hop. I believe that that kind of music killed rhythm and blues and soul. That's an interesting take. That is a very interesting take, that kind of music, that hip hop maybe did the same thing to blues and soul as Nirvana did to, or the grunge movement did to, um, classic metal. I'd like to hear that developed more, like with some examples, like of bands and like maybe when something came in and something came out. That's a really, really interesting take on that. All right. Hey Ian, hey Lance, how you doing? Glad you could be joining us today. And it says rap. Amy Miller says rap and hip hop just spoke to a completely different generation. Yeah, I think so. And there was a time to move on. I would even say that's true. I know I think there was the animosity toward hair metal because of the advent of grunge. But in a way, when we talk about what killed hair metal killed itself. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that every heavy metal band should have gone the way of hair metal or should have had any, animosity thrown toward them. I don't think that's true at all. But they started to really become um, a parody of themselves, not on purpose, but a parody of themselves. You have someone like Motley Crue in Theater of Pain dressing like trying to look like girls, which they got previously. That wasn't originally to them, but that made a mark. And then after that, you got a band like Poison who did that excessively, who took that look and went excessive with it. And then after that, you have bands like maybe bands you haven't even heard about that were hair metal, Danger, that went excessive beyond that. I mean, if your hair's up a little, you got to be up higher, and if it's up higher, it's got to be up higher. And and at some point, it becomes this comical parody. And I believe that's what happened. I believe that is part of what killed hair metal. Now, again, yeah, grunge came in and threw the bucket of hate on top of it. And yeah, a lot of bands got swept under the carpet of in a way that they shouldn't have. But at the same time, you listen to a band like Firehouse and you compare them to a band like Motley Crue, or you compare them to a band like, a band like Nirvana, even going the other way. They're ridiculous. I'm sorry if there's Firehouse fans out there. I try to be positive as I can be, but were some bands that were just ridiculous copies of copies of copies of copies, trying to just outdo everybody. All right. What else we got here? Say here. Let's see. There was a lot of eyeliner and hairspray in the 80s bands. Yes, for sure. Absolutely. They used a lot of Aquanet. I agree. They used a lot of Aquanet. You know who has two thumbs and used a lot of Aquanet in the 80s? This guy right here. Yeah. All right. I was home with my scared little dog. Oh, what did you do for the fourth? That's got to be something about fourth. I have a dog who has, we have two dogs, and the younger of the dog does not have any anxiety when it comes to fireworks, but my older dog does. And yeah, she crawls into her kennel and feels safe there. And she knows about it before I do, because I'll be sitting on the couch and she'll come up to me and start pawing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's the fourth. I forgot. Actually, this starts happening a couple days before the fourth here. And then I have to let her into her kennel. And spandex. Oh no. Yeah, the spandex. Now I had it's embarrassing story time, folks. I had a pair of blue snakeskin um spandex shorts that I made the unfortunate mistake of wearing from time to time when I was a kid. Trying a little too much to look like the bands the way they looked on the videos. Yeah, that was not a great look. I got made fun. I learned real quickly when I made a fashion faux pas like that. Uh, I think a lot of American bands were trying to copy bands of the UK and failed miserably. Um, yeah, I know that. There's been what's called two waves of British invasion. The first wave of British invasion was the Beatles mania, and then all the bands that wanted to copy the Beatles, and all the bands that grew up with the Beatles, and all that stuff. And then you had American bands at that time, even then, trying to copy the British bands. So I'm not sure if you're talking about that era or if you're talking about what's called the New Wave era. Now, why they called it New Wave, interesting little tidbit of information that I know, is because it was the second wave of British invasion. And why were they getting so popular? Well, this happened in the 80s when MTV came out. And when MTV came out, the British sound, the British videos were being played much more. And the reason why they were being played a lot more on MTV is because they had better videos. Their videos told a story. And so American bands tended to just kind of stand in front of the camera or play with their band or something, where if you look at British bands at that time, they told a story. And so then this became super popular. All these Morrissey and all these bands became super popular. And so then you had what's called new wave, because they all kind of had a sound. And you had American bands trying to imitate that as well. And some of them did great. Some of them I don't think did so well. And then the third British wave happened in the mid 90s, and it wasn't that popular. It really saw its peak with Oasis and Blur. But that never caught on. It was never pronounced enough to be considered a true wave. You didn't have people trying to imitate Oasis. You didn't have people trying to imitate Blur, but you did have a lot of people trying to imitate the Beatles, and a lot of people trying to imitate Morrissey. Uh, yeah, I don't know what you're. Oh, maybe the shorts. That's probably the most embarrassing thing I've talked about so far. Terrell is in the house. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, Terrell. My thoughts and prayers are with you and your family, as well as those affected by yesterday's horrible tragedy in Highland Park in Illinois. Yes, for sure. That's a sad deal. And I should probably be more sympathetic toward that right now. But the fact is I'm still learning how to be a human being during that, during this time. All right. Duran Duran Culture Club Human League. Yes. Those were some great ones. Probably the one that I listened to the one that I listened to out of all those still is Duran Duran. I will still put on some Duran Duran and listen to it at work. So Tom Petty had some amazing videos. Yeah, indeed he did. He had some great videos. Yeah, he was. What you're saying. Yeah, he was more of an exception to the rule. That's the thing with music and taste and everything is you can all. It's such a large pool that you're always going to find somebody who doesn't quite fit that mold. Um, that's just the way it is. Taco, Naked Eyes, ABC, Flock of Seagulls. Yeah, that I know. I don't know. Taco. Is that Taco Comet or Taco Naked comma or Naked Eyes comma? You see, I don't know exactly. I know Flock of Seagulls, so that's got to be different. But and that last band, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but I do know who they are. Let's see. Emily, thank you. A person can only handle so much grief. You're fine. Yeah, and I kind of right now I might be distracted for the moment and acting a little how I almost think like there's a filter everybody else has on how I should grieve. And believe me, I mean, I might be kind of a little bit more joyful right now in front of you guys and stuff like that. But I've had my times. I've had my very dark and disturbing times, and it hits you. It's like in waves. It's just so crazy. Um, yeah, and nights are the worst as well. So please be praying for me. All right. When Nirvana released Nevermind in 1991, it marked the beginning of the end of the golden age of hair metal, right? I would definitely say yes to that, Terrell. Yeah, was the beginning of the end of hair metal. That's for sure. Dates are correct. Nirvana, Nevermind, yeah. And it died very quickly. And as I was saying before too, not only did the new music that was emerging help it die, but it kind of committed suicide as well. Too much putting on the Ritz. Oh, putting on the Ritz. Ritz Taco. Oh, was that the band? You gotta. We have to teach you how to use commas, buddy. This is why they're important. Thank you, Tracy. One day at a time. Yeah, yeah. True was their that song from that band. I guess, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard that the name of the band comes from um, when they hung the Nazis that they caught as war criminals. And this is a little grim, just to let you know. And I just heard this. I don't know. I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't check it out. The source at the time seemed pretty credible. But basically, in after World War II, when the Nazis were captured and then hung for their war crimes, their feet would shake in a certain way, and that was the name of that band. I don't know how to pronounce that band, but anyway, that's a little dark. That's a little grim. I'll try to lighten it up here. But I heard that was where that name of that band comes from. So I don't know. Do you think that some 80s hair bands transitioned to adopt different sounds in the 90s in order to stay relevant? I absolutely think that they did. And we actually, I can't remember, it was an episode, it was a while back, but it was a very interesting episode where we talked about, where one of the questions we asked is if you could go back and talk to one of these 80s bands that tried to change their sound in the 90s, what would you say to them? And the thing that I think everybody came up with was, hey, don't change. It's going to be a flash in the pan. Yeah, don't change. But a lot of them did. A lot of bands tried to sound different or not as they just wanted to make it more relevant. They try to sound alternative in a way, or even going alternative. The guy from Whitesnake, the lead singer from Whitesnake, not Whitesnake, sorry, that's David Coverdale. White Lion, the guy from White Lion, in the 90s released an unplugged version of his stuff where he's just kind of playing the guitar. I don't even know. You might be able to look it up on YouTube. But when you have somebody doing something like that, trying to sound like very grungy with with your old songs that you got all dolled up for, yeah, that's changing your style. All right. Um, yeah, that's a good point too. Uh, Kiss was one of those bands that really tried to um, make the switch to grunge because they had made the switch before. They went from the kind of classic old school sounding rock to heavy metal without any problem. And you got to remember, if there's anything that Kiss is a business band. Gene and Paul are business partners and they know and understand business. And when the grunge movement hit, I think it was like Psycho Circus or something like that, that they try to put out as more of a grunge band. They saw it trending in that direction. And so they try to put out that sound, a couple albums, either one album or two albums. I can't remember what albums they were. Um, but of course, because the underground movement is the underground movement, they rejected it. Nobody growing up then, or being in that crowd then, at that point bought that album, it tanked. Uh, uh, it was a horrible attempt to try to change your sound. I saw White Lion live locally. They tried to get me backstage, and I was like, nope, nope, not for White Lion. Yeah, I get it. White Lion is, you get to that point, you are getting copies of copies, and they're getting more excessive, and with each copy, they're kind of getting worse. So, oh hey, Daryl Johnson, thank you, Ian. How the heck are you? Well, that's an interesting question. We've kind of been discussing that, floating in and out of grunge, and also just, who I am, or how I am doing, who I am. Um, yeah, it goes between like doing my best to not think about it and succeeding to dwelling on things and contemplating my existential being. So that's how it's going. Uh Wasn't the beloved but canceled too soon my so-called life responsible for bringing grunge like edge into TV teen drama genre? Um, was mostly glamorized by shows like Beverly Hills 90210. Uh, yeah, I mean, grunge. Look, I don't know how much my so-called life real affected things, because I never watched it personally, my so-called life. I know it was a big deal, but I never got into it, never watched it. Um, but I mean, the grunge movement, it's hard to say whether or not that just copied what was already going on in teenage culture, or if that influenced teenage culture. I really don't know. It could go either way, Terrell. I do know that the grunge movement was huge as a look, as a sound, as everything. It was huge, and oh, in we had grunge stores even here where I was from. We had stores that were selling flannel and long johns, and so you'd walk around with your shorts on, but long johns underneath your shorts. Um, I mean, it was huge, and it was huge before my so-called life. I don't know if that answers that question or not, but it's the best I can do for now. Oh, you are. I love hearing when I'm right. You are 100% right. Kiss Gene Simmons is actually an accountant. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they survived the storm too. People still go to their concerts. They still sell out concerts. Yeah, Kiss, look it up. That I think that's when they started being kind of like more of a metal band. And I think Lick It Up was the second album that they had Vinnie Vincent on. Is either the first album or the second album they had Vinnie Vincent on. And Vinnie Vincent brought that 80s guitar sound that was being popularized at the time. Lots of heavy, double picking guitar sound. Um, I get it. I have friends who are going through the same thing, and I'm keeping an eye on that. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for getting it. Let's see. Let's see. I never saw it. I'm not sure what it was. Where's Thrash tonight? Thrash couldn't make it. I mean, it's not Monday, it's a Tuesday. So Thrash was unable to make it. Oh yeah. That's Tracy said. Oh yeah. And then please, thank you. Hit the like button. Thank you. Yeah. He works tonight. So he just wasn't able to make it, but we should be here next Monday. And just so you know, too, um, I'm going to be interviewing Fat Samurai guy, on Thursday night. And I was going to make it a live stream, but I decided against that because I just found out that Pat's doing a live stream on Thursday. And so I'm just going to go ahead and just record it and make it a podcast. I wanted to make it a live stream because the last time he was on, was another podcast, and I wasn't able to get him back on the Monday night. The truth of the matter is he probably would have said yes to coming on my show on Monday night, but at the time was doing his own show on Monday night, and he was making money on that. People were donating in the chat, and so I felt guilty asking him to be on a Monday night live stream, because that would have taken away from, you know, that would have cost him money. And so I never asked him to be on the live stream. So then when we decided Thursday, the only time he can do it is in the evenings. I thought about making it a live stream, but yeah, Pat is going to be on tomorrow night, so I'm not. But I also won't be able to join the show with not join live, but join in the chat with you guys on Pat's show. So I'm not going to be making it a live stream. That would be a jerk thing to do. So, and he's got Jerry Mathers on. So, all right. Many people said that grunge pretty much died after Kurt Cobain tragically took his own life in April 1994 at an unfortunate young age of 27. Talking about the 27 Club. Yeah, there are a lot of. That's the most common death. Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin. Uh, just a bunch of them. The Purple Haze guy. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. Yeah, 27. And then, yeah, there's been a ton of people in the, on died at 27. Kurt Cobain unfortunately killed himself. And one of the dates for the end of grunge is 1994. The other date for the end of grunge is in 1996 when Pearl Jam broke up. All right, grunge. I think of Courtney Love and the murder of Kurt Cobain. Yeah, hey, that's a big theory out there. It's a big theory, that Courtney had Kurt Cobain murdered. Number one dude. Hi, ENC. Great to see you back, brother. It's good to be back. And, it's good to be back. It's good to be interacting with all of you. And it helps me out a bit. So some people might think, yeah, Jimi Hendrix, right? Thank you. Some people might think, oh, it's a little too soon or something like that, but it really kind of helps me break out of my bubble. So I'm going to be, I'm going to be back. I mean, this is something I want to do. This is something I like doing. So might be a little premature, but I'm back. Amy Winehouse. Yes, Amy Winehouse was 27 as well, as far as I know. There are actually a lot of them that were 27. All right. Well, let's see. What do we think here, folks? We've done an hour. We're almost at an hour. I'd still love to talk if you guys have questions or you want to interact with me on any level, music of any era. But if not, we can kind of sign off. I don't ever want to end the show like way after everybody's all signed off and ready to go. I always, hate that. I want to end at the peak, people are like, yeah, let's have this. Let's see it again. My dog is scratching at the door. Let's see. Did the rising popularity of hip hop and bubblegum pop really cause the demise of grunge? I don't know about the rise of hip hop causing the demise of grunge. Unfortunately, grunge shares, this is going to sound odd. All right. So if you think I'm going off rails on this, please let me know. But grunge oddly shares some characteristics with hair metal. And one of those odd characteristics is it starts to become a parody of itself. You have the original band. Now similarity doesn't mean total identity. There are still more differences than there are similarities. But where the similarities are, they're there. I'm not making it up. That's how I see it. And one of those similarities is that it became a parody of itself. It was so popular that then you had people like me, at least at one time, who didn't live in the North West and didn't need to wear flannel, was wearing flannel and trying to sound as much like those bands as possible. So in that sense, I think that grunge also in a way killed itself. And just what was popular right at the time with people coming up, Britney Spears and things like that. Um and I think that it just rose up because grunge died. And then at the same time, just like with um with grunge having some bad feelings about hair metal, you had bands also saying things like, "We're the anti-grunge band. We're tired of all this heroin rock," is what they used to call it if you didn't like it. I'm tired of all this heroin rock. People like Kid Rock and oh, I forgot the name of the band, but they came out almost as anti-grunge bands, and even had said so in interviews that we're against grunge here. Anyway, uh, I live in the Northwest. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you were would you have been there when the whole grunge movement happened? I'm sure you saw it happen. Next thing you know, kids are showing up at high school looking like they should be going to chop down some trees. So so anyway, all right. What else we got, folks? I think we might call it an evening. My dog is scratching at the door. Let's see. Kid Rock looks grungier than any grunge band member. Yeah, he had his own look that I think that grunge was part of it. Yeah, he kind of had that dirty little look, but he wasn't. I guess he wasn't wearing the flannel. I think that would have been a big difference. He was wearing that top hat and the wife beaters and stuff like that. So he was grungy, dirty, but like everything else was kind of like, I don't know, a weird look, probably from his own background or something. All right. Good night, Ian. Thank you. Thank you. Well, folks, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share on your favorite social media. Look forward to my video that's coming out tomorrow, 10 things you didn't know about married with children. I really appreciate you guys. Um, uh, I was living back home in Chicago in the 90s. Yeah. I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you for showing up to this program, and we will catch you again. Hey, let's see. One more. Oh, you want to meet my puppy? The door is locked, and I have to. Next time, I'll let you meet the puppy. I promise. Okay. Everybody, hit that like button, or maybe I'll make a video with my puppy and because if I open the door, they come in and out, and if I close the door tight, not only do they not come in and out, but it also cancels out a lot of the noise from the other room. So yeah. Anyway, all right. I better go attend to this puppy though here real soon. Take care, everyone. Good night.